Hello and welcome to another episode of Quickies with Angela and Caity.
I'm Angela Dawn of Authentic Heart Coaching. I'm a tantric sex coach and I help couples get closer.
And I'm Caity Wilkinson of Caity Coaches. I'm a sex, love, and relationship coach, and I can help you bring more pleasure to your partnership by bringing more pleasure to yourself. In our last episode, I interviewed Angela and her partner Dan about their relationship, which was a lot of fun and very interesting. So we decided to keep the theme of couples interviews going.
Right, Caity. I had so much fun sharing along with Dan in our last episode, and we just thought it would be really neat to do another couple-focused interview. And we had the idea to chat with our friend and colleague, Deborah, about her relationship.
So we know Deb from our coaching training, and not only is she a liberatory life coach for accomplished and exhausted leaders who have a commitment to social justice, but she also does collaborative racial equity consulting. And she is a white woman of European descent married to a Black African-American man with whom she has 2 grown sons. We asked Deb if she was interested in joining us to let us pick her brain about the intersection between racial equity and romantic partnership. And we were absolutely thrilled when she suggested that we interview her and her partner Dave together. Dave is a former nonprofit CFO, having worked mostly in higher education, who now has joined Deb in their business, Thriving for Equity Incorporated, as co-owner and CFO. He's currently training as a coach, and they are integrating liberatory life coaching and culture-shifting business consulting and financial services in the work they do, with a particular focus on supporting Black leaders of social impact organizations and women solopreneurs. Their work centers on the belief that everyone should have equitable access to what they need to thrive and not just survive. And for Deb and Dave, thriving is not only the result that they're aiming for in their work with clients, but also in the methodology that they teach. Thriving is both the goal and the path to equity. We are very excited to hear from both of you. So welcome to Quickies, Deb and Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to start things off, how did you two meet?
You go first.
I go first. Okay. We met at a conference, the title of which was Issues in Evangelicalism from an African American Perspective. I was coming from my conservative evangelical college where I was in grad school, and he was coming with his pastor from his church in Philadelphia.
Mm.
That is
You want to take it from
amazing.
there though? Like, you remember meeting me?
I do. So we were sitting at dinner, and on my right-hand side were, my pastor and some folks that we were talking. On my left-hand side was Deb, and then people she was talking with. And I could kind of hear what they were talking about. And I heard her talking about doctoral programs. And she mentioned Temple University, and that's where I went to school. So I like turned around and said, well, I'm from Temple. I could talk to you about Temple. And I think that was like it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the start. And I was completely sleep deprived. I hadn't slept all night because we had driven through the night. And
She doesn't sleep in cars.
so I was a little like punch drunk from lack of sleep. Very excited when he said he had gone to Temple. So
yep.
And we just kept talking the whole weekend and did the whole little like sit close, nobody moves things and like that. And then when we were leaving, there was groups of people saying goodbye, and kind of the like, are we going to go off to the side and say goodbye? Like, it was very we were very innocent, which I don't know how much that will come up, but in this conversation, but yeah, it was a very young, in a way, I would say, way to kind of do the interactions, given that we were 27, I think, when we met. We met in 93.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I was wondering, kind of calculating, because he got my number. Maybe he'll call me in a couple of weeks, he'll have to be kind of cool about it. But I got home on Sunday, and
I think I called you that day or something.
Yes,
or
you did.
Yeah, it was
and then quick. 4 times that week. But the 4th time, he made sure to let me know he was going out with someone else that night. So it was there was quite a bit of approach avoid for a little while. But pretty soon we were dating. We dated long distance. I was in Chicago and he was in Philly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I love hearing that you guys met at a conference, because when I tell people, when people approach me and they're looking for a partner and they want to meet in person, they don't want to use the apps, I'm like, go to events that you care about.
Yep.
Because you're going to meet people at those kind of events that are aligned with your values. So I think that's really beautiful to hear that
Absolutely.
in real life,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And before we dive into more of the educational content today, I'd also love to ask you, what are a couple of things that you love and admire about each other?
I think I go first this time.
Okay.
So, and this is funny because I usually don't talk very much. So she usually waits for me. So, well, I love how she has been about growing and changing over the last almost, I guess, 30 years now, almost 30 years. And so, I've not been able to just stay the same person. So I've had to say, well, what am I going to do? And so, this kind of growth and change, that she's really committed to, and I think finds joy in. I really love that about her. And then I love the fact, one of the things that I think she saw in me, that helped her kind of come down the path with me, was that I love food, and her dad doesn't eat very much. That's different than like a plain hamburger. And so I, variety of things. And so like, we were able to kind of go out and enjoy a variety of restaurants and eating experiences. And so that's really fun. I love that about her. And she's been just a great mom to our boys. So I really love that.
I love that you had like the really deep thing and then like the really like light thing. That was really cool. It's true though. One of the things that was on my like kind of checklist in my head for someone I would partner with was someone who would eat a lot of different things, because I didn't want to be like confined in what I got to eat. So yeah, I like that about him. When I asked him early on if you could have like any meal you wanted, what would it be? He said, I don't know, probably something I haven't had before. And I was like, yes, got that one. Okay. Yeah. So that's one thing. And kind of aligned with the other thing that he said, one of the first things that came to mind for me was that he has been open to massive change in me. I mean, like I said, we met at a conference called Issues in Evangelicalism from an African-American perspective. And I grew up very, very conservative evangelical Christian. And we met within that context. Like we didn't even kiss for like 6 months. That wasn't so much me, but he had kind of come into this space where it was like really like purity culture kind of idea. Yeah. And so you can guess, since I met you all in a sex, love, and relationship coach training program that has Tantra and Taoist influence, that I've changed a little bit since
just
then.
a little bit of change, Deb, just a little bit.
A little, yeah. And he just keeps managing to like open, like he's like, and that, I think that's connected to two things. One thing that's obvious and that I think attracted me to him early on is that he is steady. Like he's just steady, and he's never cruel, like ever, except to himself, but not to anyone else. And so I really was a person with huge emotional ups and downs. And so that steadiness really attracted me to him. And I think what I know about him now and what is more available now is that underneath that steadiness, there's actually, there's an amazing energy, like if you want to call it life force energy or whatever, like it's like just, I had this image of the national park where there's like a thin crust of earth and there are these like hot water geysers that come up. You can't walk on the earth because you might just go through. Like that's what he's like. Like he looks really like stable, calm, maybe even boring. But then when you tap into who is actually underneath there, it's like this incredible power. And I think that, yeah, I think that was there from the beginning. Because to be honest, like looks wise, and this isn't about race or color of skin, just like body shape, whatever, like he wasn't really my type. But there was this like attraction, and the attraction always came from our heart connection. Like from the beginning, that's when like I would be sexually attracted to him when he was really in that space and I was in that space. And so I think that's also driven our ongoing growth and connection as well.
That's so beautiful. And I love the food connection too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All the sensuality.
Yeah, I have so many things to say about what you all like and admire. And I'm just like bursting. I'm like, I've got 3 more episodes right here.
We can come back.
That piece about how Dave is able to hold space and like really exist in the energy of who he is and be that steady like rock for your, giving you the space to grow and change, like Deb, giving you the space to have your emotional experience as a human on this planet that we all have a right to have, right? And I love hearing about that exchange, and I think it's a really beautiful tends to be a feminine role in partnership to sort of bring the growth and bring the challenge and have your partner like not only go along with it, but like see you and see your growth and support you and meet you there. Like it, so it's this really beautiful sort of masculine and feminine that you guys have going on. I love it.
Yeah. Like bring the challenge, meet the challenge, bring the challenge.
Exactly.
Meet the challenge.
Exactly. I love it. And so, when we were going to have you all on, I mean, obviously this is about one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you was this interracial partnership, this like really interesting dynamic. And I know that a lot of couples face potential problems with family or peers when they fall in love with someone, from another background or group. And so, right away, I'm wondering, Deb, did you go home from this conference and think, well, I like Dave, but this might be an issue?
Yes and no. I'd already been on a bit of a journey with, I'd been involved. I mean, that's how I ended up at this conference that was about African-American perspectives. So, and I had lived in Chicago and gone to a church that was intentionally interracial, white and Black primarily. During that summer, there was a time when I went with a guy, we were just friends, but he was a Black guy. And we were in a big crowd, so he held my hand, and I had this awareness of like, oh, this feels a little uncomfortable. And I was also sort of horrified with myself that I would feel uncomfortable. And I think, so I had this, I had worked with some of that, and I think probably had some conversations with my parents about some of it and had some awareness. But not too much, because explicitly I was never taught not to date people of other races. And I was taught that, the civil rights movement was really important. Like even within the form of Christianity that my parents had, and to their credit, they worked with this, like their form of Christianity could not support saying no to an interracial relationship.
Nice.
And before we even went to the movies, literally, I had already been asked about, what about the children? How could you do this to the children? It will be so hard for them. And so it was actually kind of shocking. Like, I was like, wait, what? Like, why are we talking about my children already? And that's a really common thing for white
Mhm.
parents, especially white parents that like explicitly don't have a problem with interracial relationships. The children become the thing. Like
Right.
you couldn't do this horrible thing to your imaginary children that you don't have yet. We actually waited a year longer to get married than we would have.
Yeah.
Because I did have the sense that my parents would come around. And honestly, if he had been not a Christian, that would have been a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
So, but to their credit, they admitted their discomfort and they worked through some stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Dave's
Yeah.
parents were different. So I'll let you talk about that.
So just a little different. I think my dad, I don't know if he like felt good about it or bad about it. I think his basic take was, if you're happy, I'm happy. And
Mhm.
like, but I don't know that he was like super engaged or invested, right? So
I think what you told me was
Yeah.
that he said something like, well, why couldn't you have come home with a nice black girl from church? But okay.
Yeah.
Like,
My mom had more of a problem with it, but I think a big piece of all of this that's behind, kind of behind it is, my mom was a public school teacher and librarian, and she sent me to private school. So from first grade on, I was in private school in the Philadelphia suburbs. And so that the idea of the world of me being in the space with Deb was not unfamiliar to me.
Mhm.
Like it's what I knew. And so, one of the things my mom wanted me to do was to find my birth mother. So I'm adopted. And
Okay.
so she wanted me to find my birth mother. And that could be another segment if you want. That's a whole nother story.
we
But
got a whole series for you.
but
here.
Yeah, I know. There's so much.
she wanted me to do that because I think she thought like if I found my birth family, I'd be more like aligned with marrying a black woman aside.
Mhm.
But I didn't actually like follow all the way through at that point.
You did some of it though.
I did. I got like a page and a half. But back then the laws hadn't changed, so I still didn't know their names.
Mm.
But I think over that 2 years, she also was able to transition. And I think for her, I think in general, she has like a view of mothers and mother-in-laws and wives, and that those two things don't work. Like that's like her general view of life. And so I think one of the things that's been really fascinating and really I think trying to think of the right word, but I mean it's been great is to have her here with us in this house in Baltimore. She moved in back in November, and to have her experience like Deb, like taking care of things. So like this way in which she thought, I never want to live with them because mothers and mother-in-laws and wives don't work. Well, it does work. And so like she now is I think really comfortable and really loves this space that we're in. It's really primarily because Deb's able to actually like make sure she's set up well.
Well, and also to her credit, she was against the marriage still when we got married. But none of our parents like refused to go to the wedding or anything like that.
Yeah.
And about 2 years into our marriage, she apologized to me.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
That's really sweet.
It was, takes a lot.
Yeah.
I need your water. Sorry.
That's
But
okay.
like
Yeah.
our friends and I think in general, I mean I had a few friends who were kind of like really, but for the most part, we kind of lived in a space where we had like a little bubble almost, where pretty much everybody was accepting of it. It wasn't a major issue to us in our friend relationships.
Yeah, I think it was surprising actually that for us, and also even in traveling, like I remember both before and after getting married, but like we were very intentional about where we lived, even within Philadelphia, choosing to live in one of a couple neighborhoods that were pretty racially mixed, raise our kids in those neighborhoods. But I remember going down to South Carolina for my cousin's wedding and being really nervous. And we drove like, how is this going to be? We really haven't had very many negative experiences. But it was we did a lot of work before we got married with our families. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's beautiful. I mean, it's so nice to hear about you not having a lot of issues like with friends and neighbors and the outside world. And then the issues that did come up with your families of origin, you all were able to really beautifully work through it. And I'm sure they could see how much you all love each other, and that had to be a huge piece of them, being able to welcome a daughter or son into their lives. And that is such a trope, though, the thing about the mother-in-law and the wife. I don't know why that continues to be perpetuated, because it really,
Misogyny.
really, it definitely should be a myth. It definitely should be a myth.
Yeah.
So another thing that I'm curious about here, what initially attracted the two of you to each other, and has that evolved or shifted over time as your relationship has grown and deepened?
Yeah. I think I would say absolutely. When she was talking about where we met, I came into that space to try and find order. And so I was not as innocent. And so like it kind of gave me a way to like come back into relationships and meeting people in the world and like do it in a way that had some order to it.
You mean like the conservative Christian space?
Yeah. So I didn't grow up in it wasn't a conservative household. It had like pieces of it, but it was nothing like what she grew up in. So what I'm saying all that to like kind of just let you know that there was a distinction between kind of who we were in that space when we met. But I mean, ultimately, she was pretty, and I was like, she's pretty. And
that's straightforward.
And we talked a lot, and so we got to know each other, and I'd say relatively quickly at some level, just like at a surface level, but we talked about a lot of things, and she was really highly intelligent, and I was like attracted to that, and so yeah. And I think in some way the Christian part of it was attractive to me at that point in time.
Yeah, I only allowed myself to be interested in Christians at that time. So that was definitely an important piece. I don't know if I can put my finger on like the things like other than what I already mentioned, kind of just this like sense, like it was more of a sense, like I had a sense, I really hadn't dated much. And generally when I dated or was even interested in someone, like I had an interest and then pretty quickly I'd be like, nope, and with him. So it was like, I was still interested in 2 weeks. I was still interested in 6 weeks. And really within like 8 weeks, I was like, I think I might marry him. But I don't know if I could have given you a list. I think that's true of a lot of big decisions in my life. It's like, there's just a knowing. And I had that knowing. And I also, because of the work I'd done around race and my intentionality, like the reason I was looking at Temple was because I was looking at cities in the Northeast where I was still in kind of a white savior mentality around education, where I could like teach in underserved neighborhoods, but I could also this is very practical. I could also get out of the city to, we had a family place in upstate New York on a lake. And I knew like I can't live in the noise and the activity of a city if I can't get out, and I'm probably going to be broke because I'm going to do this service-oriented work. So I was looking at northern cities. I was looking at, and Philadelphia was one of 5. And I was looking at PhD programs in urban education. Temple had a new one. So there were these synchronicities too, like this Temple connection, this Philly connection, and then, you know, and then we got along really well and had fun together, and had, aligned values as far as what our values were at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can't overestimate the power of an inner knowing.
Very much.
For sure. Yeah.
Especially as women. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So Deb, when did you specifically get into racial equity and leadership work? Can you talk a little bit about your background? And it sounds like the relationship came before the vocation path, or do I have those flipped?
Yes and no. I in high school, I moved to Georgia from Illinois in high school. And that was my first experience of a couple of things. My first experience of being the racial minority in my high school. My first experience of seeing the vastly different level of education that I was getting at a public school in Illinois and at a public school in Georgia. Like at the time, I think Georgia was 48th or 49th in the US in terms of like quality of education. So I'd been a freshman in high school in Illinois, and then I went to this high school in Georgia and was like, wow, like I'm not going to be able to do college if this is where I graduate from. And this school is almost all Black. Like, so it really started to challenge my understanding of the world. During that time, I came across Langston Hughes' Theme for English B, which is this beautiful poem about his experience with a white professor. And so that really asking all these questions about, you know, the intertwining of their lives and what does it mean? And so there were these pieces stirring in me, but I really didn't do a lot with them. And then I think the reason I was at that conference was because I took a class at my conservative evangelical school called the African American Experience. And in between, so in between undergrad and grad school, I moved into Chicago, lived in a mixed race neighborhood, taught in a school that predominantly served Latino and Black kids, cried every day before going to work, came home and cried, like felt completely out of my element, incapable, all the things. So I'd had these experiences before I met him, but I wasn't like actively doing racial equity anything. And even once we were married, there was a long period of time where I would say the main thing that I did was feel guilty. And there's a wonderful video on YouTube by Allie Michaels, where it's titled, How Can I Have a Positive Racial Identity? I'm White. And she talks about that, like this like feeling like I'm guilty and my job is to make other people feel guilty. That's all I really knew. And to raise my kids with a positive view of themselves, like to teach, when I was teaching, to teach Black kids and do what I could so that they had a positive view of themselves, and to do that with my sons. But I really was, I would say 20 years, like pretty much stuck in shame. So I wasn't particularly effective as a racial equity advocate or collaborator or anything. And so I'd say that's like the last 10 years, because I remember we were in.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So the other piece of it is, you know, my really like both of my parents have master's degrees. So they were kind of at, you know, on the edge, leading edge of their generation. And my mom's mom, my grandmother, went to Fisk and the teens.
Oh, wow.
So like, you know, I think there was a very strong, at least through my mom's family, there was very much a, you know, white culture is the highest order. And I did a lot, I think, of just, you know, being in it. So like when I'm in the private school, and I don't even know, it wasn't like a bad experience. It was more you just absorb. I think one of the big things that people miss is you were absorbing a lot. And so it's not like you're getting taught. I mean, you may be getting taught differently, but the reality is what you're doing is you're absorbing this privilege that all these people are walking in. And you may not even be aware of it, but you're getting it. And so part of what I did for the first, you know, 20 years when we were together was it took me that long to kind of step away from, well, today I'll just code switch and I'll do my really nice black person in the white person's world thing. And then I'll do my other thing over here. And like that's what I did. And I didn't and it took me, you know, I think one of the first things, like I voted for George Bush and, you know, like
the first time around, not the second time.
But I think I went to work at a GlaxoSmithKline in like 2001, 2002. And one of the things that I think started me on my path was there was a black guy there who's a VP. And, you know, I got to know him a little bit. And he made a statement one day and he's like, we have to keep fighting the fight. And I was just like, what is he talking about?
Dave was not about fighting the fight.
Like the fight's over. Haven't we won the fight already? And so like it helped me to really be like, oh, no, we haven't won the fight. like the fight is.
But you didn't want to believe that.
Yeah,
for a long time.
It took me a while, but like that was really one of the statements that like somebody who's got to the VP level, but like had to fight to get there. It was like, okay, all right, now let me start really looking at things. And I think that then helped like the last 10 years.
Yeah. So I think what that showed, like, so we were kind of both in cahoots, right?
Yeah.
I'll do white shame and try to raise our children as best I can. And Dave was doing, I'm being the good black person. So even like we would have conversations upon occasion, like I was like, I can't be the black person in our family. Like I can bring in the books and stuff, but I can't be the black person. Like our kids need that from you, but he really didn't want to have to be the black person. He didn't want to have to be the black person at Glaxo. He didn't want to have to be the black person at our predominantly white church once we switched churches because we were first in a black church. And then, you know, and so I think we both had to grow out of both of those spaces. And that's been the last 10 years. And so as we both did that, my part was kind of recognizing, I remember being in a restaurant in LA. We lived in LA for 6 years. And it was a black owned restaurant. And I was like, this is so great. We're in this black owned space. It's predominantly black people in the space. This is so good. And I remember having this awareness where I was like, oh my gosh, like, I believe I'm the bad thing in the room. Like I had flipped white supremacy and like, and I had this realization that was not helping me to take action. And so that, I don't know how many years ago that was, maybe eight.
Is that supposed to be?
8 or.
Is that supposed to be?
I think so.
Yeah.
But then I started getting more training. So I did a racial justice from the heart training. And I really looked for people. I looked for trainers of color to work with who approached this work from a place of love and compassion. Not like ease, and I won't say the hard things to you, but not like not increasing my shame.
Right.
And I had some amazing people that I got to work with along the way. And so then I didn't pursue opportunities, but they started coming to me. And particularly in the coaching space, which is predominantly, the coaching spaces I'm in are predominantly white women, both as leaders and participants. And so things would come up and I would feel like I needed to bring something up. And then that in some cases has led to me doing trainings. But I always do trainings with a partner of color unless I'm just working with white people.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's kind of how.
Yeah. And she's really good at it. It's like, it's been amazing to watch the organizations that she replies to, like then actually go through their own process of replying
Mhm.
at varying levels, but it's like, it's been great. I think the other piece that I want to mention is while our families got to the place where they could work with us and they were okay with us and they love our kids, they were not, that's not necessarily, that did not mean that they were they dealt with their own issues
Mhm.
around race. And so I think as we've actually gotten to a place where we are both much more aware of and
Vocal about.
like then now we're pushing them in
Mhm.
that they're not comfortable because they only dealt with it around us. They didn't really deal with
Right.
it at large. So
Yeah, they dealt with it on like a personal level, not on a more universal global
right.
societal
Yeah,
level.
and the Trump's first election brought up a lot of stuff too, particularly for our kids and with my family. And I think that was a big piece of what brought me out of just being quiet. Like we would just avoid subjects with our
Mhm.
families instead of like leading in any way and when Trump got elected and members of my family, especially my parents, were like giving our son Josh, who was in college at the time, like a hard time around like why he was so upset and and why was he worried about his friends and that really called me into like I have to be the white person in this family.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
Dave shouldn't have to have this conversation. They shouldn't have to have this conversation. And so really in a lot of ways, it was that called me into like being brave and breaking these like very good girl, like patterns I had of no conflict, no rocking the boat, no anything, like we'll just avoid, we'll just only go for 2 days and then we'll leave, but don't have the conversation. I really didn't, I didn't have, the only choice I had was leave my children
Mhm.
to face that or stand up and be the white person who says, no, you can talk to me. I will educate you, but they don't have to educate you. And so that also was part of that shift in my growth as well.
Wow. Again, there's so much there. Katie, I'm just going to go off.
We're just going to talk about dating today.
Well, so it's funny because you all are talking about your relationship in the context of these larger societal themes, right? Around shame. And I'm particularly attracted to that piece, right? Because I'm a Tantra coach, right? So people have shame around sex, people have shame around their identity, people have sort of people-pleasing tendencies that you referenced, Deb, especially women. And these themes that come up through your relationship are the same themes that come up in people's sex lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea, one of the translations of the word tantra is to weave. And the idea is that you are weaving every piece of who you are together and accepting yourself as a whole and accepting your partner as a whole if you're in a tantric partnership, and you're not throwing away the parts that you don't like, right? You're working with that. You're not discarding. And I think that moment, Deb, when you talked about being in the restaurant and realizing I'm the bad, like, or having that thought that I'm the bad one here. And that like identification of the fact that, wait, no, I'm basically good. I am love. I am a human. Like, this isn't the truth. I have to shift out of this to be able to grow. And so I loved hearing that story. I had a really similar story at one point on my Buddhist path of like, oh, wait, no, I have to shift into a different level of accepting who I am and appreciating who I am to be able to grow further on my path. And, you know, it's something that we see consistently with any kind of growth. There's these mindset shifts that have to happen before we can move forward. Thank you for sharing that.
I also like the element of the self-responsibility there. It's recognizing, okay, I've grown up in this culture with a lot of conditioning here, recognizing my own privilege too, and the impact that that's going to have on other people, even though I don't intend it to have that effect, but it absolutely is having that effect too. So you're recognizing like, yes, there's a lot at play here.
Yeah. Impact versus intention is so crucial to any kind of work where we're working with different kinds of marginalized identities. And I think that reminds me of another piece, if it's okay for me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
The gender race piece has been an interesting one for us to work with. And I think it would be I don't know what it would be like to be the opposite, where you have a white guy with a woman of color, because one of the things that we have the ability to work with is like, I experience the marginalization of being a woman. He experiences the marginalization of being Black. And so there are times when we can have like a common ground there of some level of understanding. But I think in our relationship, for me, the gender piece came after, like and that's where it's connected to the shame. So I was primed as a woman and I was primed as a conservative Christian for shame. So I just switched it to like shame for being white. You know, like I was ready for that, but I didn't have an experience of growing in terms of like, I was not supposed to be a feminist. Like that was like one of the worst things you could possibly be, so dangerous in my family. And so my growth around gender has been also more recent, and it came later. And Dave, part of what we've noticed, again, I'd say in the last 10 years, are the ways that I was coming over to his side in a way, like doing all this. I did all this work, all this learning around race, around the Black experience, all of this, but he wasn't doing the same around gender. And one example of that is our name. So my maiden name is Shine, and I now go by Deb Shine Valentine. I made it my middle name, but I experienced incredible angst trying to decide whether I would take his name, would I hyphenate, would I not take his name, and then whose name would the kids have? Like, I struggled so much with that. He no, didn't think about it.
No, I didn't.
That's a gender thing, right? But I thought about it in relation to race too, because I was like, well, okay, so as a woman, I shouldn't have to take his name, but as a Black man, he shouldn't have to take my name. And actually, both our names come from white guys, so who cares? Like, it was like, there's no answer here, but still, I was the only one who thought about it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's been another piece of the, you know, that there's intersectional identities, right? So we're working with gender and we're working with race, and shame comes up in different spaces in both places. And I know you want to say something. Can I finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
That I think it affects us in terms of sex too. Some of the bigger pieces, the ways I got conditioned as a good Christian white woman.
Absolutely.
But also like Black men, there's a lot of danger for them in being really sexually expressive. So I think the ways that we've struggled in terms of sex are not completely disconnected from the racial context and the gendered context that we're in as well.
Two things from my standpoint. One was, you were talking about you're dealing with the gender piece happened later, and I was actually thinking about it when we had Josh. And I was wondering, like, his first 2 years and like your experience of
Oh,
that. Was
yeah.
that like really maybe the first gender element that like you were expected to?
Yeah, so what he's referring to, and we may be getting way off
You may
topic,
be way
so
off.
edit as you need, is the mothering piece. Like,
Yeah.
I was raised to be a stay-at-home mom. So when we had our first child and I stayed home, I honestly don't remember very much of those 2 years. And I think probably I was pretty depressed. But I think it was it was not okay in my worldview for me to not love being home with my baby. Like that's what I was supposed to love. This was supposed to be my highest calling. I was supposed to be enjoying it. So yeah, I think that definitely shook some things. And then there were things in our church that we were in at the time where I realized that I had really been allowing myself to be emotionally manipulated at the very least. And so there were a couple of different things that along the way that impacted that.
So that's all. But yeah, I think the name element for me, and I'm actually very close now to considering it. But
considering what?
Like the hyphenation, because she's been asking me. Well, telling me, but yeah, either way.
Telling you what? What have I been telling you?
Do you want me to hyphenate today?
No, I've been telling you I want you to consider can actually just like actually work with the possibility.
So I am there. And I think it's I think for me, one of the things that's been actually helpful in all of it is I did actually find my birth mother. And so like I now have a variety of names that I'm connected to.
Pick.
And it's so it's really but I also, I think one of the things that I've seen is the importance of names. And so the couple that adopted her, the father was a insurance salesman, farm owner, funeral home owner in southern Georgia or southern Virginia. So maybe 20 minutes from the Carolina border. And this was in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And so he was a dark man. So like he actually did really well. And so like the road is his name. There's like a little burial ground that he has that has my parents in it and him and his wife and a couple other folks. And so like that Crawford name that I've been born under like has importance, and it's like you can see it. And so I am actually really thinking about making changes going forward.
Yeah, beautiful. I think this has been so interesting to hear about your journey, the sort of interpersonal relationship with the family, and then your kind of own personal journey opening up to the personal shifts that needed to happen to really learn more and be more fully who you are. And I'm going to kind of like combine the next two questions, I decided, Caity, because I feel like they go together. And I think, we wanted to ask you, what did you feel like your biggest challenge has been in terms of being an interracial couple? And were there times in these, big challenge times where you questioned your relationship because of having to navigate that?
I'm rolling around trying to think of the times, but I would say I don't think of any of our times where we had challenges were around race. It's my impression or my memory, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, you can answer.
I'm trying to think of things. I think one of the things that's been I think from my standpoint, one of the things that's been difficult is I think raising our sons and like having their understanding of what it means to be a Black man in America from my vantage point. I don't know that they got it and or got really understood anything from me until they were much older. I don't know that I even dealt in any of that with them. And I think I did basically what my parents did, which was like basically, be a good kid, play by the rules, don't cause too much trouble, and like you'll make it, and it'll all work out. And I was not, in my own space dealing with it myself, and so then like to try and do anything with them, that was meaningful was tough. I remember, like, Obama came to our neighborhood. So like we went to see Obama in our neighborhood. Like we did those kind of things. But, there was an incident with my oldest son and they went to a charter school, and I was on the board at a charter school at the time. And I don't know if he was in like 5th or 6th grade at the time. And I think I was picking him up that day. And it turns out like some of the kids in his class, I believe, took his brand new book bag that we had bought him and like trashed it and put it in the toilet. And like I think my response to that just lacked any real recognition of like the racial elements of it or anything. I think I really, I was trying to comfort him and whatever, but I don't think it was a full response for me. And I think I should have given him more of who I was in that moment. So I feel like I had like these times where, I wasn't helping them in ways that I should have. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen our sons, but they're both really light skinned. So like to the point where, they could kind of pass if they really wanted to. So but they both have like owned in their own ways their Blackness. And so like they're not passing, and they're actually responding themselves when they're in situations with their white friends. And their white friends have friends who are not as sensitive. And so they can bring it, they're bringing, like, who do you think I am? And, using that in their own relationships. And so I'm really proud of them in that sense. But I think that's probably like the thing where, and I don't know if it was like a relational thing, but it was a thing for myself in particular.
I don't think I've ever thought about leaving the relationship because of race. And I don't think Dave thinks like that, period. Like he's just like a kind of naturally solid monogamous kind of guy. That's my impression. I have had these moments where I'm like, wouldn't you be better off with a Black woman? Like, I just think that would be so much better for you. But he hasn't expressed that. So I don't know. So I don't think there have been times when I've wondered if we were going to make it, but it really didn't feel like it was about race. And honestly, as I've grown, I feel like it would be much harder for me to be with a white guy now, because white guys have so much to work through.
Start over,
in this cultural context. So that feels like it would potentially be a little harder. So yeah, I wouldn't say that. And I would say it's mostly so enriching. We were at a party for one of his friends recently, one of his Black fraternity, Alpha Brothers, 60th birthday. And I think I was the only white person in the room. And that's unusual because of the circles that we're in. There's often a couple of us, even at predominantly Black events. And I was like, I was the only white person in the room today, I think. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like, what my life is so good. Like what, like, it's just so much better because I get to be in spaces where I wouldn't be otherwise. Like, and these are wonderful people to be around, you know, and our society is still so segregated.
Yes.
But it takes intentionality for that to happen. You know, we were intentional about the neighborhoods we chose to live in. We were intentional about the churches that we picked. We're intentional about every party that we have, every dinner party that we have, about being as integrative as possible around race, around sexual orientation, you know, and then as you start being more aware, you get more aware of all the other privileged and marginal identities that there are. And we have a lot of privilege, you know, as you can, certainly educational privilege. So yeah, I mostly experience it as being really, really a beautiful, positive, enriching part of my life. And I think any white person who's considering being in an interracial relationship needs to do a shit ton of their own work, and they need to be ready to keep doing a shit ton of work, and they need to not make that their partner's job, and they need to process things outside of the partnership. And that's tricky. Like times when there's something that comes up and I'm trying to decide, can I talk to Dave, my husband, about this? Or is that potentially too damaging because of whatever racial component there is, and I should talk to someone else? That's probably the main place where it comes up. But I think white people can be really unaware about, like, it is a big deal to go into and like what Dave was saying, he had a lack of awareness around race. For a long time, I had more awareness around race than he did. And why am I saying that? So I think if you're marrying someone who has had to do what Dave did and what his parents did, who's had to live in white dominant contexts and be the good Black person who's not scary in the white dominant context, they will have some shutdown around all of that. And they get to have that. That was part of it for me too, was like, I didn't marry a caricature Black man. I married this one. He voted for George W. Bush the first time around, right? Like I had to work with this. I'm married to this Black man, not this caricature or this idea I have of someone. And so I just think that's like the biggest thing to me is, like, yes, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It can be wonderful. Yes, it adds some extra tensions at various points, particularly around parenting and families. And, you know, if you're a white person, like do your own work, even if you're married to the person, that doesn't mean that you're out of the woods. Like do your own work and keep doing your own work. So.
And as a Black person, like remain open. And like figure out how to do that. Because I think the general tendency is for my friends is, well, we'll just do our own thing. And that's what, you know, we went to was a thing. It was like, yeah, we don't need white people here because all our friends are Black and we're just going to gather together. And, you know, we do that through church and we do it through other mechanisms. So like being able to, I think I'd say not give up on the experiment. And like still remain open and still have the possibility of relationships is important.
And at the same time, you having those Black only spaces has become more important in recent years. Yeah. And like, so that having that space to really be Black and I'm not there and that's fine and that's good and it's nourishing. Yeah. And then we come back together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious how you both support each other and yourselves when a challenge related to any element of identity, whether that's racial, whether that's gender, anything else that we've touched on in this episode. How do you provide that support?
It's a good question.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, I think for me, one of the things is to really operate from a space of love. And so to kind of stay away from the judgment and guilt and shame, all those things, and really say, all right, I love Deb, let me see what I can do and who I could be, that would help her and support her. That's been important for me, because I think, you know, I think a lot of people, particularly maybe in our parents' generation, you know, the judgment framework is strong, and so like trying to break out of that has been really important. And I think, you know, we actually have a great meditation practice we do that I think
wonderful.
we bring things up, and so we're able to kind of address them in that framework. So that's been really helpful. I think, what else?
I think that, yeah, like the kind of general context piece is what we talked about right at the beginning, this like ongoing commitment to growth. And part of what that has brought us. So one of the things I will say in terms of how I see Dave holding space for me, regardless of what the issue is like his own commitment to growth has been that he's gotten less I've gotten less critical, and he's gotten less defensive.
Yeah.
And so we have more moments where like I can be in like a heightened, you know, we would say triggered state or nervous system activation, all those coachy words we use, right? Like, and he more often now can like take a breath. Two breaths. And listen, you know, and just hold the space and listen. And I also more often can notice in myself, oh, I'm feeling unsafe. And I notice it because I want to attack or criticize. And I can like back that up, go in another room, stomp out my anger, like do a Vita practice, like, and then come back and communicate the message of the anger without all of the harsh criticism and judgment. And so that component in our relationship has shifted, and I think it makes space for a variety of challenges. And if it is something around race or gender, I think we also are comfortable saying like, I'd like to talk to you about something, and it involves race and my dad. Like, do you think, will that work for you right now? Or like, would you rather I call my friend Eileen, you know?
Have the bones for it right now, or at all.
So I think we're able to do that too.
That's really like maybe the last 10 years.
The last 10 years have been a big deal.
They've been a big
deal. It sounds like it. And I mean, it's just it's beautiful to hear you all talk about the space holding and the support and the quality of your communication. And I just keep thinking about how like this is applicable to an interracial relationship, but it is applicable to all relationships, right? This is where we have to get to as couples, right? As humans that are in relationship with each other, whatever kind of relationship that is. And we're like, this is the least quick quickies maybe we've ever had. So I'm gonna kind of wrap it up, but I feel like we could talk to you for days, Deb and Dave. So I wanted to ask what advice you have for our listeners around having a mixed race relationship, and really any final closing thoughts that you have for our
Well, I think I gave my main one, which was what I said about white people, especially like doing their own work, not just assuming, oh, we can marry whoever we want, it'll be fine. Like, no, do your own work. There's real stuff here still. And you're going to need to do that work, and you need to do it with white people, and you need to do it by reading diverse authors and listening to diverse podcasts and putting yourself in spaces where you're not the dominant, you know, culture, all of that. Like that's my main one around the interracial piece in particular. And I think around the the just relationship piece, it's probably also what we just said. Like just keep, it's that combination of doing your own work, doing your own internal work, and don't think you have to do this alone. Oh my gosh, I've had therapists, he's had therapists. We've both had coaches. We've had coaches together. We've had therapy together. We've had family therapy. Like this did not just magically happen all by ourselves. We pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps. Like we have community. We have friends. We have people we pay. Like we get all the support.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that idea of having a community that you're working within, and that you can actually, to what she was saying earlier, like you could go talk to someone else to work out your issue if talking to your spouse or partner is not the right person at the right time. So it does need to be a space that you build together that has some community to it and some outreach that you can do. And I think the other piece is, like what you all have been reflecting back to us is, a lot of it's just about couple stuff. Like you just have, like, it's not even about black and white, it's about couple stuff. And so there may be like the other layer below it, that is black and white and that adds to it. But if you're not getting the couple stuff right, like it doesn't matter what you're going to do on the racial side. Like you have to get the couple stuff right.
Yes, beautiful.
Thank you both so much for your time here today and for sharing with us this inside look at your partnership.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting us.
This was great. Thank you.
I so enjoyed it. Just hearing about the blossoming of your relationship in so many ways. And I really loved the last piece about how much support you all have sought through the process. And that's what got you this beautiful relationship that you have. It's your work, your tenacity, but also the support of coaches and therapists and community is,
and I give Dave a lot of props for that, right? Because as a Black man, it's becoming more common now, but like a lot easier for a white woman to ask for help. Than for a man, than for a Black man. And so his openness to that has been a huge piece of our, ability to grow together. And that takes a lot of courage. I think it takes humility and courage, especially for men in our culture.
Absolutely.
So
that was beautiful. Thank you again. And that's all for this episode of Quickies with Angela and Caity. Thank you so much for listening, and you can follow us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
And if you'd like more great information on sex, love, and relationships, be sure to follow us both on social media. I am at Authentic Heart Coaching on Instagram and AuthenticHeartCoach.com on the web.
And you can find me on CaityCoaches.com as well as Instagram at CaityCoaches.
And you all heard me talk in our last episode about my Get Closer Tantra Couples Retreat coming up this July in Costa Rica. If you are ready to up-level your partnership, let's have a conversation about the retreat. I have a couple of spots left to join Dan and myself, so please reach out and email me at angeladawn@AuthenticHeartCoach.com or DM me on social media, and we can set up a time to talk about whether the retreat is the right opportunity for you and your partner to level up.
We also have spectacular virtual classes all about vulva pleasure, orgasm, sexual aliveness, and deep, passionate connection with your partner. And if that's something that's interesting to you, check out our classes for women and men at pwclass.com. And with that said, we'll see you next time on Quickies with Angela and Caity.